Over 36 months, Russia has waged war on Ukraine, and today we'll examine the military situation. I am Julian Rupke with BILD Situation Room. We start once again with distressing images from yesterday morning. There, Russia attacked the city of Dobropilya near Pokrovsk in the east of the country, specifically with heavy artillery. Here we see a video from the night showing that cluster munitions were used. That cluster bombs were used right in the middle of a civilian area, as mentioned. I'd say let's just listen in. Let's take a moment and hear what's going on here. Here you can see and hear it. The cluster bomb attack, there's also an ambulance parked here. We're right here in the middle of a civilian area, and we're about to see how it looked the very next day. We have a total of 11 civilian fatalities to mourn. Another 47 individuals were injured as a direct result of this attack. And now we'll take another look at the work carried out the following morning. First, we'll see just how severely these buildings here, which we're now seeing at night, have been damaged. And here we see it, and just how much the buildings as well as the vehicles around them have been destroyed everywhere. This courtyard was struck, and now we witness the extensive destruction caused by Russia's actions. Yes, the same as the past 3 years. More refugees are being created. We can see how the United Nations Refugee Agency here is not only distributing blankets, but also conducting registrations for even more people who, we've just seen them load their furniture, now evacuated here, unable to continue living in this 28,000 resident town near the front line. Because Russia is continuing to terrorize the civilian population here, because with their bombs, even if they are aiming at military targets, they may indeed be doing that they still end up hitting civilians. We have another video from the neighboring city of Kursk, or at least very close by, which shows us why Russia, with its FAB bombs, also with its glide bombs, launched from aircraft, sometimes hits with remarkable precision, but at other times completely misses their intended target. Even if this building here in the center was the target, it also looks like a civilian building because perhaps Ukrainian soldiers were stationed or taking shelter there. Even then, it's clear the operator has no idea where the bomb will land or simply decides to change their target, shifting focus on the fly without any real precision or direction. This square, which looks extremely modern here, gives the illusion of predicting where the strike will happen, so to speak. But we see that the strike occurred somewhere completely different, in another large building which was also hit. And this shows us once again how unclear and uncertain it is, even for the Russians, what they are hitting when they target cities and in some cases large cities within Ukraine. We'll remain in Donetsk for now, moving back from Siversk to the Pokrovsk area. There we have a new video from Uspenivka, one of those small villages that was seized or taken over by or recaptured by the Ukrainian army, and here we can observe another BMP-2 armored vehicle being precisely targeted and struck by Ukrainian drones. A very recent video demonstrates that the limited number of Russian armored vehicles which managed to push forward near Pokrovsk toward the front lines, and how they are specifically and systematically destroyed by the Ukrainian army. Now we can see here the vehicle was kind of hidden there. It's been dug into the ground, most likely at one of these specific locations. Likely a former Ukrainian. Trench position. Look around. Someone dug for months, only to lose it to the Russians in the end. We can see these large mounds piled up all around here, but it clearly shows if the Russians manage to bring an armored vehicle to the front near Pokrovsk, then these individual armored vehicles will also be repeatedly attacked. And so the Russians ultimately find themselves stuck in a sit-down war around Pokrovsk, where only the Ukrainians, if at all, manage to make small advances. Can force marches. The video we just saw was taken from this specific region here. That means it was developed and originated in the specific region between Udachne and Uspenivka. But we can see that otherwise a relatively static front still prevails here. We still have a total of 4 locations that have been successfully reclaimed by the Ukrainians along the entire front line. And we can observe that the front here continues to stay relatively stable. The front in Kursk is anything but stable, and that's where we want to take a look now. We have numerous new footage from the Russian army showing that in recent days they have managed to advance significantly and reclaim many towns. We have footage here first from the village of Chekaskaye Poreshnya, and we can see how the Russian army has taken complete control of the church in this location, how they are now proudly raising their flag and clearly asserting their presence. We're here now, and after 7 long months, we've finally succeeded in reclaiming this small village near Malaya Loknya. And we'll take a look at the map shortly. There are indeed very dramatic reports from this morning, both from the Ukrainian and the Russian side, which give us a glimpse of what has happened here in the past few hours, namely that there was a breakthrough by the Russian army in Kursk and accordingly a large-scale withdrawal of the Ukrainians from this region, at least from some cities and towns in this region. We'll take a look at another video from Lebedevka, which also surfaced yesterday, another former, yes, or still a Russian town, though it was under Ukrainian control for 7 months. And here too, as the camera moves closer, we see that on what is likely, yes, a monument to what in Russia is called the Great Patriotic War, that here the Russian flag, both the tricolor and the flag of the Russian airborne troops have been raised to demonstrate Lebedevka too is now under our control. And also, this place was fiercely contested for a long time, but now it has clearly fallen back into Russian hands. So we see this flag waving here. The Russians are very proud of it, but also the fact that they can wave these flags and move relatively freely in and out of the church here. That shows us that the Ukrainians here have huge problems. We've already heard in the last 1 to 2 weeks that there are far too few kamikaze drones here now to be able to continue defending themselves. We know that the Russians, with their thousands of North Koreans who invaded, but also with their own military units who are deeply concentrated on the fact that they've successfully achieved substantial advancements in this sector. Let's first take a quick look at the map before we watch a very telling and revealing video from the region. The map of Kursk. We have the status from last night here, and even this status is already dramatic. Because we can see on one side that Chekaskaya Poreshnie is still marked in blue in this area, indicating the situation hasn't changed yet. But we can see how much the contested area, the light blue area here, has already moved closer. We just saw Lebedevka, a place near Svetlikovo, which has also come under Russian control. But what we are receiving reports about this morning, and the first ones have also been confirmed by Ukraine, is that we have the entire region here to the north, meaning between these two locations, everything around the small town of Malaya Loknya here, possibly a major Russian offensive is currently moving southwards. And we have also seen footage of Ukrainian soldiers retreating on foot, clearly struggling to hold their defensive positions against this relentless Russian onslaught. Preceding this, in recent days, as I just mentioned, there was this North Korean initiative. Here, reports indicate that more than 1,000 soldiers were deployed with the specific mission of advancing toward the border region close to Sumy. So, as they advanced north of Guyevo and south of Sudzha, the Ukrainians claimed in the meantime that they had defeated the North Koreans here and had repelled this advance once again. Yet that doesn't appear to be true. Instead, we're seeing a significant offensive by Russian and North Korean forces advancing towards Sudzha from all directions. As mentioned, we'll check Sudzha itself later, the former 6,500 person town still under Ukrainian control. And as we've repeatedly discussed in recent days, the Russians are indeed capable of flying their fiber-optic drones over there directly from all around, or at least, so to say, from 3 directions within a certain range of the small town. Now we can see what the Russian army, primarily the Air Force, has done to this city. We recall between August 6th and 10th, the Ukrainian army launched a surprise offensive, capturing Sudzha with almost no resistance encountered. Back then, many people remained, few buildings were ruined. Now 7 months later, we see the aftermath. The Russian army completely devastated this Russian city, turning it into rubble and managing to blow off almost every single roof. We see it here. Life is out of the question, of course, but that's the heart of Sudzha, as mentioned earlier. We can still see the smoke on the horizon, and now we're about to see the approach to a Striker, meaning an armored vehicle of the Ukrainians supplied from the US, back when they were still delivering vehicles under President Joe Biden, the predecessor of Donald Trump, who no longer supports Ukraine. And now we're about to see the final approach, which means we clearly have the information from the drone operator who knows from where he needs to approach, and that in this little grove here, there's the Striker, of course attempting to stay hidden from the Russian drones. But as I said, due to this absolute surveillance from all directions, we can see it here. This is a fiber optic drone, which is capable of acting with extreme precision. There's the Delta again, clearly seen, to stress it once more. So we're right in the middle of Kursk here, and we've got a Ukrainian army unit in front of us. And now we're witnessing the final approach of this first kamikaze drone as it hurtles directly into the Striker vehicle. The whole thing, as mentioned, is dramatic for Ukraine because they're simply unable to evade it, as they can no longer defend themselves here, being attacked from all sides. Now we're once again seeing the approach from a different perspective. The Russians have accumulated a considerable number of sophisticated fiber optic drones here, enabling them to effectively target every single vehicle in Sudzha, even under heavy fire. And one of the few options Ukraine has to defend against these kamikaze drones is the use of decoys, specifically designed to mimic armored vehicles. And here we see the approach of another fiber optic kamikaze drone, specifically in the Sumy region, meaning right next door. And there we see a tank, which this drone or its operator still currently believes to be an authentic Leopard 2 tank, originally designed and manufactured in Germany. But now we're about to see it. The entire setup is actually a decoy, a carefully crafted replica made of wood, metal, and most likely tarp. And now we're seeing just how well this decoy was constructed. So now it's probably dawning on the operator, okay, I don't need to fly in there. I don't need to go behind the tower into the engine compartment because the whole thing isn't an actual tank. Essentially, the drone pilot was fooled here. And the question, of course, is what does he do now? He can keep this drone airborne for approximately 15 minutes maximum. It might crash soon after, which of course isn't shown in the Russian propaganda clip. It's also possible that it manages to fly back to the operator as quickly as possible or even finds another target. That's pretty unlikely though, because it's also dragging that fiber optic cable behind it, which is obviously being utilized along the entire path to the target and most likely wouldn't have sufficient remaining length to fully complete the return journey back to the operator. Finally, let's take a look at Ukraine's efforts to counter these Geran 2, or formerly Shahid 136 kamikaze drones, the long-range kamikaze drones of the Russian military. We have footage here that once again shows how often Mi-24 or Mi-8 helicopters are deployed by the Ukrainian Air Force using their heavy machine guns to repeatedly take shots at these Geran 2 drones. Here we can see the tracer rounds. Sometimes they score a hit. That means some of the shots naturally miss while others strike, and now we repeatedly observe the impact happening directly in the engine compartment of the Geran 2 drone. Very often, we see the explosion occurring only on the ground because, of course, not the entire drone is packed with explosives, while here we see the attack on another one. That means it's not particularly likely that an explosion occurs mid-air because the explosive material is only positioned in one specific part of this drone. However, we'll see it again in just a moment when the crash happens and this drone lands on this meadow or this field. We often see massive explosions, as we can see here. Otherwise, these explosions would have hit critical infrastructure in Ukraine, which would, of course, have been extremely difficult and extremely bad for Ukraine as well. Here we see, once again, not only are helicopters being shot down, but machine guns are also being used to target the long-range surveillance drones of the Russian military. We now see once again from the gunner's perspective, who is operating the weapons, that these drones can also be attacked by helicopters, which are used daily. Russia deploys between 50 and 150 drones a day, fought off by helicopters who defend the Ukrainian airspace and thus also Ukrainian infrastructure every day.